Yes, we will be talking about building materials. As you can see from my picture over here, I have all sorts of materials for roofing, for walls, for insulation. I mean, I've got conventional and non-conventional material. It's all in there. Now, I do want to say though that we will not be discussing this actual material, but rather we'll be discussing how and the procedures and the flow how these materials are ordered and who orders them and what must happen after ordering, that sort of information. So let's just get right into it, okay? So by this, these are just a few outcomes, which means these are a few things that you should have learned by the end of this lesson. Part one is that by the end of this class, students should be able to describe procurement procedures with reference to ordering. Procurement means buying. Okay, so ordering. So first you order and then follow up operations, like what happens after ordering, and then taking delivery and checking. Um, and then the storage of the material once it's been delivered, and then authorizing payment. Now, this is just the order of how material works and how it's done on a construction site. Now, as you can see, payment is the last thing. Okay, it's not like when you go to a shop, say Checkers, to buy groceries. You pay for the groceries first before you can take them home. That's the flow of when you are buying groceries. But in a construction site, you receive the material first, and then payment is the last thing that happens. Well, you can pay a deposit to secure the material, but payment is usually the last thing that happens, as you can see from this flow. So that's part one, and then part two, which we'll probably do it next week, but we'll get to explain and discuss documentation in the supply of material with reference to order forms. What are order forms? What do they look like? Requisition forms. What are requisition forms? What does that word mean? Well, you have to stick around until next week. Watch next week's week 7 video to find out exactly what requisition forms are. And then we've got advice notes, delivery notes, invoices, receipts. These are things we'll talk about next week in detail. And so are these other points. Discuss and explain combined documentation. What is that? Describe cutting down on wastage. Explain and discuss how to prevent theft. All of this is next week's work. Okay, this week, which is focusing on those first outcomes. All right. Now, let's get right into it. First of all, here's what I want you to have in the worldview that I want you to have in your mind. Think of as we go through these slides, just think of yourself as the contractor. Okay, that's the perspective we're talking on, the company that is actually doing the construction on site. Okay, so think of yourself as a contractor. The satisfactory supply of raw materials. Okay, as a contractor, you need raw materials in order to construct, such as bricks. That's raw material. That's what you need, and they need to be in good condition. It must be satisfactory. Okay, it starts with careful phasing and planning of the required material. So you plan for the material. The designers would have designed also the flow diagram of what you should construct first. So with what you should construct first, you must plan for the material that is needed for what to construct first. Then buyers will send inquiries to 2 or 3 more suppliers. So once you have identified the material that you need, as a contractor, you should have a person or a department called a buyer. Okay, now that person's job is to do exactly what the word suggests: buy these materials. So, but before he buys it, he must get usually it's 3 quotations. 3 quotations is usually the standard from suppliers. So sourcing different from different suppliers of the same material, okay, so that you can compare between the two. Now, what do you compare? It's not just price. I know you just said price, but it's not just price. You need to consider as well things like transportation, because you might find that the cheapest one is far, but now it will cost more to transport that. While still on transportation, does the supplier provide transportation at all, or do you have to go fetch the material yourself? So you might want a supplier that transports as well. So that's a higher price than the one who's not. So there's many things to consider in actual fact. Okay, and then in some cases, inquiries are sent directly to manufacturers for items such as aggregate, brick, and cement. Well, inquiries are just questions, just in case you have further questions regarding that material. If the builder is successful in his bid for the work, he will place his orders with the suppliers of his choice. Well, not builder, that word there should be buyer. So from the 3 quotation, he will be satisfied with one of them, basically, and then that one that he's satisfied with, that's the one he'll place an order with. He doesn't order from the other 2 that did not, that were not satisfactory, rather. Okay, so follow-up operations are next, and orders must be confirmed. So once it's decided to place an order, he places an order with that supplier, okay? And then the supplier needs to confirm then that they have received the order. Now, confirmation can come in form of telephone, email, there's lots of ways to confirm. And then on a continuous basis, progressing orders have to be placed for bulk materials such as bricks, cement, stones. Now, this point, what it's really talking about is that it's saying that there are continuous material on site. For example, bricks, like we're talking about bricks right now. Let's say a building the whole building requires 1,000 bricks. So now, as a buyer, you're not going to buy all 1,000 at once, because you need to store them as well on site, and there might not be enough, enough room or storage room. So you order 100, at a time. So then it's called a continuous basis, because you're ordering 100, and then you're using the 100, and then you need to order another 100. That's a continuous basis ordering from the same supplier. So all 1,000 will come from the same supplier, and you've actually ordered 1,000, but now you're ordering batches of 100. That makes it continuous. And then most materials cannot be used immediately. They have to be stored on site. That's just it. Like, for example, might find that building needs 3 windows, and then you decide to order it immediately as a buyer, but because windows only come after the wall has been built, so you need to store those windows somewhere before you can use them. Okay, then this is just a conclusion of that. The head office pays for material. Remember, I told you that you should think of yourself as the contractor, and under the contractor you had a buyer, but under the contractor as well you have a head office of the contractor itself. Now, you do not keep money on site, even if you're a contractor. You usually must have an office, and it's the head office that pays for the material. Now, it might sound like an arbitrary example or point, but believe me, you're gonna get this question in your exam and in your test, asking you, who pays for the material, and you must be able to say the head office of the contractor. Okay, you do not say the buyer. The buyer does not pay for the material. The buyer just orders the material, but it could be that the buyer also has a little petty cash to buy a little material. It's usually done that way as well, but the payment is done by the head office. Okay, so now let's talk about some few procedures. So ordering, follow-up operations. Okay, talking about follow-up operations. The buying department is responsible for ordering building material. We've spoken about that. The buyer orders the material. This department makes sure that delivery takes place as planned. Okay, remember that as well, that as a buying department, you are the one who makes sure that the material you've ordered is paid and will actually arrive on site. So this is just one point that you should have in mind. Order in time to give the supplier a chance to properly organize delivery. Now, this point really speaks to when to order. Okay, you do not order material immediately when you need them. You only order material as planned. So, for example, you will have a plan. You may say that in your plan, you're gonna start building in a month's time. So you order before the month arrives. You don't order after the month has elapsed. So the ordering time has to be before you actually need the material. Like it says here, one reason to do that is because to give the supplier a chance to organize delivery if they do actually provide delivery. And then telephone orders must be confirmed in writing. You see, writing is very important when it comes to ordering if you call, because writing is the only way you can really prove that something has been ordered. When it comes to the phone, really, you might not have a way to retrieve phone calls, and you'd have to record it. It's just a headache. It's not common practice to do that. So it's better to make a phone call and then follow it up in documentation in writing. Okay, so supervisors on site must be informed about expected deliveries. So as a buyer, you've obviously ordered the material and confirmed it, and you're the one who's in charge to make sure it gets delivered. One of the things that you make sure of is that you tell the supervisors or the foreman on site, or also the clerk of office, the clerk of works, that a material is coming by, and this is when you should expect it, because as the buyer, you are the one who's really communicating with the supplier. Okay, this gives everybody enough time to clear misunderstandings. Well, Misunderstandings are inevitable in every construction site, but you just try to minimize misunderstandings. And one way to do this is to make sure that communication happens between the buyer and the supplier, between the buyer and the foreman on site. Okay, beware of changes in the design and variation orders. This can cause original order to be adjusted. Well, by definition, variation orders are because of an extra over material that's needed that was not included in the original BOQ. So what is a BOQ? You say, well, if you remember from last week's presentation, we spoke about this, about a BOQ, that is just a document that has the material that's needed as well as the prices of the material, as per agreement between the contractor and the employer. Okay, now the buying department must keep record of everything and also what was discussed. This is another exam question. It's one of those points that sound out of place, but it's really not. You do get this question where they ask you that who must keep records. Okay, the buying department keeps records of everything, not the Department of Finance, not, what should I call, not the other departments. It's just the buying department that keeps everything. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit about progressing orders. Progressing orders are usually for bulk materials such as bricks. Yes. They gave sand, stone, cement, aggregates as well. Buying department must monitor these orders on a continuous basis. Another exam question: who monitors orders on site? You must be able to say the buyer or the buying department. Okay, and then order enough material to keep work flowing. It's an important point because it's part of planning. Once you see that, okay, for the first 100 bricks that you've used, you need to order another 100. So say maybe when there's like 30 or 20 bricks left, you order the next batch. You don't wait until the whole 100 bricks are finished to order the next 100. You order them when it's, when you still have a baked. That allows for continuous work to happen on site. Okay, so that when the other 100, the next batch of 100 arrives, it just continue. There's no disturbance on the flow of work. Okay, so forward copies of drafted delivery schedules to suppliers and keep in touch with them. This is just speaking to the communication. That communication is really key. Communication must happen between buyers and suppliers. Okay, the storekeeper must be informed about date to expect deliveries. Some material, they require special storage, such as steel. It needs to be placed in a closed room, number one, with the roof, and it must be elevated from the ground as well to prevent, all of this is to prevent moisture touching steel, because when steel has moisture, it rusts. If it gets wet, it rusts. So the storekeeper needs to be informed if such material is coming on site to prepare a room for it, because some material have special needs, just like steel. Okay, and then make follow-ups to avoid delays. Once you've ordered material from the supplier, it's very important to make follow-ups to keep on reminding them that you have an order and checking progress of that order as well, because remember, they are also human, prone to mistakes and prone to forgetting your order. It happens on site, so you have to make follow-up communication. SOI communication is very key between buyers and the suppliers. Okay, now let's talk about taking delivery and checking. So both the receiver of goods and the driver of the delivery vehicle must sign the delivery document. So as the material is being delivered on site, probably a truck came to deliver that material, still talking about bricks. So a truck carrying bricks from the supplier will arrive on site. The driver of that truck, or someone else going with that truck, but let's just say he's going alone, so it's the driver. He will have documentation with him, delivery documents, and those delivery documents must be signed by himself and one person representing the contractor, representing which would probably most likely be this foreman on site. So this person makes sure that the material that is delivered is the one that was ordered and that it is in good condition, then it signs. If material is faulty, he can make a comment, or if material is wrong, he can make a comment but not sign if material is not delivered. Okay, so he only signs once a material has been delivered to confirm that it was delivered good condition. All right, let's talk a little bit about storage. The advice from manufacturers and suppliers concerning proper storage methods should be studied and followed. Like we've just spoken about steel, that it needs special, storage conditions. So you must make sure that that the storekeeper observes these conditions. Store building material in a way to avoid double handling. So double handling really speaks of how you store the material. If you know that that you will need material immediately, then you probably store it in such a sequence that it will be easier to access it first. Okay, so if I need material today, I'll probably store it nearest to the entrance. I don't want to double handle it of storing at the back of the storage room, and then I'll double handle it when I'm taking it out of the back and then taking it out of the storage. That's double handling. Should be able to come in the storage and just take it out without any hindrance. Okay, so this will ensure that materials will not obstruct other activities of site. Well, this is what I just explained. That's another benefit. Storekeeper performs the following duties. Okay, storekeeper is very important. He records the recording of receipts from delivery. So as a storekeeper, you can be one of the people that signs the delivery documents with the driver to make sure you receive it. And then number two, operation of minimum recorder levels. So this is really just speaking about making sure that everything is recorded. Okay, so you record if material is defective in one way, you record that. If it arrived, late or early, you record that. You record the time of arrival. So these are just minimum. These are the minimum recording levels or the minimum requirements of recording These are just things that should be recorded. Okay, accounting for returnable packages, such as if one of the material is defective, it should be returned so that non-defective material is delivered. So as a storekeeper, you really make sure that you account for it, you write it down, you record it, make sure you can account for returnable packages, or rather returnable material. Transfers between contracts. So that's just speaking about contracts. When you say contracts, we really mean that it's transferring from the supplier to the contractor. There's contract between the supplier and the contractor on site. So all of those contract documents, the storekeeper should have a copy. Disposing of scrap, like if the material has now been damaged and it needs to be disposed of, the storekeeper must make sure he identifies this material and that he monitors it and actually records and keeps all records of the disposal of material. Constant stock taking, it should be that if it so happens that the buying department wants to know how much material is left on site or in the storeroom, it is the storekeeper who has this information, because as material is being taken out, he is actually taking note of that. And stock taking. Okay, so stock taking speaks of also doing an audit on how much material is left. So getting in the storeroom and literally counting how much material is left. That's stock taking as well. Annual assets and control. The assets that we're talking about here are the material. Those are the assets we're talking about here. So annually as well, he has to account as to say, this year we've used this much material. Okay, so storekeeper keeps all that material information, and also security arrangements by watchmen and dogs, or whatever security that is needed on site. Also cameras, such things that may be needed on site. So storekeeper makes sure that all material is secured and there is security to avoid a theft, to avoid vandalism and unnecessary damages. Okay, that's all on the storekeeper. And then, like I said, this must be the last slide. The last thing that happens is authorizing payment. Invoices must be compared with original orders to confirm that the correct materials have been supplied at agreed prices, and then be authorized for payment. Like I said, payment is the last thing that happens on site. So here's the flow. Buying department orders material from supplier. Supplier sends quotations to buying department. So 3 suppliers have sent quotation. Okay, one becomes successful because the buyer chooses one, and then the buyer confirms with the supplier that, okay, we want the material. So the supplier sends the material on site with a truck, and the truck, he signs delivery documents together with one person representing the contractor. He takes those documents back to the supplier, and then the supplier sends an invoice of material that was delivered in good condition to the buying department. And then the buying department takes that invoice and takes the original order documents, like the quotation, takes all those documents to the finance department, and then and only then does the finance department release the payment, having after compared all these documents and reviewed them, and then they make the payment to the supplier. As you can see, payment was the last thing that happened, and that's just it. So that's the flow of ordering material on site, delivery, and payment. Well, that's it. I think we're done with this presentation. I'm happy with what we've spoken about today.